What are all these fees? What are all these numbers on here? Welcome into Turnkey on Queen City News Plus, your go-to show for everything real estate in the Carolinas. We dive into the latest market trends, do's and don'ts in the industry, and provide expert advice on navigating this dynamic landscape that we call home. I am your host, Morgan Francis, and when it comes to buying a home, it is the most expensive decision of your life, right? One that you should research thoroughly. So what about the person guiding you through that process? We're going to talk about how to select a real estate agent and the role that the lender or the loan officer plays in helping you get to that closing date. So for help on that, I am joined by Christina and Tom Bramhall. You guys are the dynamic duo, married couple. Tom, you are the real estate agent, and Christina, you are the loan officer, senior loan officer, right?
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Sure.
So let's start out with a personal question. What came first, love or real estate?
Real estate.
It actually
it did? Okay.
Yeah.
Uh-huh.
Yeah.
Yeah, I was in the business we met in 2016. I was in the business for about 3 to 4 years before I met him.
Okay.
And I was ramping up a magazine that was for real estate called Charlotte Real Producers. It still exists today. I am not the owner of it anymore, but walked into her office and I was actually trying to sell her advertising.
You ended up selling yourself.
Yeah. Ended up scoring a date, and here we are, married with a child, couple childs.
Happens fast, doesn't it?
Yeah.
So the dynamic is interesting, and I don't know if you guys do a ton of deals together. Is that kind of the goal, or does it ever work out? Some
if it happens, but we both completely have our own separate businesses.
Yeah,
Right.
yeah.
Mm-hmm.
So Tom, let's start with you. Off the top, I mentioned that buying a home, the most important decision that people make in their lives, aside from finding their significant other, right? But how does someone choose their real estate agent?
Well, I think what a lot of people do is they go with somebody that they already know, which I think is awesome, and you should do that.
Mm-hmm.
But I think you got to ask some more questions, right? So just because you have a real estate license doesn't mean that you're actually practicing it, the day-to-day efforts of a real estate agent. There's a lot that goes into it. And I think, somebody that's in the day-to-day, they've got industry knowledge, they've got local knowledge of what's, happening in the area. They know the schools, they know the development that's going on, they know where pricing is, they know if it's, leaning more towards a buyer's market, seller, investor, market. So I think, if somebody's a friend, give them a shot, but also, ask your friend those questions. How involved are they in the day-to-day business of real estate? What are they doing? How do they communicate with their, with the seller or with the buyer? What are they doing for marketing? Those kinds of things.
I'm glad you brought up marketing, because I think I actually have a clip of some of your marketing stuff. It's very interesting, and I'd like to play it for a second here. So let's pull that up.
Probably think I'm in the islands right now, but I'm not. I'm in Denver, North Carolina, in this sweet backyard. Do you want to see a modern farmhouse in Denver, North Carolina? I have a big hat. Not Colorado, North Carolina. I don't know why I'm talking like this. Let's go take a look. Yeah, having fun.
Very unique. Okay, so what goes into kind of I love the accent too, by the way. I don't know if that's in every video of yours, but I think you should stick with it. But what goes into coming up with a plan for marketing a property?
Yeah, I think, marketing I think it starts with prepping the property first, right? And then knowing the property, knowing the sellers, and then, coming up with a game plan. I like to have fun with my marketing. I think that's something that you should really look at when interviewing an agent is what are they doing with marketing? Because I truly think it helps. I truly think it's something that separates agents. What was the question again?
Because not everyone, I don't know what the question was. That was my way around it. Not everyone is probably going to want, and correct me if I'm wrong, but want the guy with the big hat marketing their.
Yeah.
So how do you kind of gauge what your client wants and market the property accordingly with still doing your job?
Yeah, I think you got to, read people. I mean, some people aren't going to like that, but I think a lot of my business comes from my sphere and people that I know, and whether that sphere's online or just the people that I know, friends and family kind of thing. but I think, people like the authenticity. So I think sometimes if they, actually one of those videos there, the pool video, somebody saw me and actually I did their house, and the other video that you showed was actually those people's houses. So,
They
so that
saw
business
you
actually
doing that.
came from the video, and
Okay.
they said, "Hey, you're doing something different. I like the authenticity. I like the creativeness. Like, you got a ton of views on that. Like, I know that you're going to be able to sell our house." We sold the house in one day.
In one day.
Yeah.
Okay. That's, you primarily focus on Lake Norman, correct?
Yeah, Lake Norman, but also the Charlotte area. Yesterday we sold a mountain house in West Jefferson. So, kind of a little bit of everything, but definitely a focus on Lake Norman area.
What have you found just through being involved in the industry? And Christina, you can always chime in on this too, because I feel like you see a lot of it in the emails that go back and forth that the clients never really know about. But what do you see in terms of the mistakes that people make when they choose an agent and questions that maybe they don't ask that they should?
Oh, there's a lot of that right now. I feel like having a good agent right now is very, very important. Back in COVID, you just slap your house up on the market, get a 2.5% rate, and it would sell that day. Now,
you got to try.
You really have to try.
You have to try. And if you're just hiring somebody and they're going to throw it on MLS, awesome. Everybody puts your house in MLS. So what are you doing outside of that? So what's the photography look like? What kind of video content are doing? How are you, leveraging some of the different technology platforms with AI? What does your network look like? Are you networking with other agents?
They're not the competition.
They're not the competition.
They are, but they're not.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. Yeah. And I think if you operate in a mindset of abundancy, which I do, it's like, I don't really look at it as competition. I call agents. Some of my best friends are agents. Our whole wedding was agents.
Yeah, not finding a lot of clients there.
Yeah,
try to sell each other.
But when a deal's getting put together and the agent on the other side, it just makes the transaction so much better. Or if there's multiple offers on a property and the agent knows you, they know that you run this like a business, and they know that you're going to get this deal done. There's more confidence, So, make yourself known to other agents. Network with other agents.
Mm-hmm. And I think something that a lot of people don't realize, and I hinted to this a little bit, are all the emails that go back and forth between the two agents, the closing attorney, the loan officer. What happens on the back end, Christina, that the client doesn't see?
When it comes just to anything in particular?
From offer accepted to closing date. What are those conversations? What conversations are happening between everyone who's involved in the transaction?
Right. I would say one thing that I do a lot with my realtors is, buyers get very emotional during this process. So I'll always, I always have that phone call with the buyers to kind of feel them out, but I also get with the realtor and I say, okay, how are they feeling? How should I approach this? Because, we were talking about this morning. We work with a lot of friends too, and people just don't act their true selves when they're buying a house. People kind of go crazy a little bit. I know
There's a lot of money involved.
It's scary. You're
emotional.
You're so emotional that you're not thinking clearly. So we have a lot of behind the scenes conversations to say, okay, how should we handle this right now? Because if you can handle something without involving the buyer, not saying that you're keeping things from them, but they don't have to, a tiny little thing. I've heard of realtors that they're negotiating and say a seller won't budge $1,000. The buyers won't go up $1,000. Sometimes agents behind the scene will be like, you know what? Let's just split it.
Yep.
Take
it out of our commission, just get across the finish line.
Yes, you do whatever it takes to get it done, but you don't do anything,
reactive.
Reactive.
So many agents, I feel like, that are just super reactive. So they're whatever's going on with their client, they feel like they have to mirror that with themselves towards like the other agent on the other side. So it's like, if you can be calm, cool, and collected with your buyer or seller, then you'll be calm, cool, and collected with the other agent on the other side. So I think just not being reactive, like just chill.
My team, we say that all the time. Like we love saying drive the ship. If you drive the ship and if you're calm as a loan officer or a realtor, I would say more so Realtor, because you guys are face to face with them more and they can feel your energy. But if you're calm and just like, everything's gonna be fine, the buyer's gonna be fine. But if you freak out and you're yelling at the other Realtor, that's not solving anything.
Well, it's not professional either.
It's not professional. And then the buyer's gonna freak out, make the process just less enjoyable for them. So there might be some freakouts behind the scenes, but you can talk to your team about it. You can talk to your spouse about it.
What's nice about us being together, so on deals that we do together, I think there's so much transparency and just relationship with our clients, but there's so much transparency and communication between Christina and I. They're in the know the whole time, like in real time, like super quick, So I think, having an agent that communicates well, but also a lender that communicates very well, just kind of offsets some of that emotion just by kind of always being in the know.
Great conversation. We're going to take a quick commercial break, and we'll be back with more Turnkey after this. Welcome back to Turnkey on Queen City News Plus, where we're talking about everything real estate. We have Christina and Tom Bramhall helping us get from offer to the closing table, as I say, the dynamic duo that does this together. Christina, we talked a lot about kind of Tom's side of all of this, but when it comes to the mortgage, that's a crucial point to get
important.
Yeah, well, you need the money, to get across the finish line. But I wanted to bring up the closing disclosure. This is something that everyone needs to get before they close. So this is just kind of a mock-up. There's no personal information on here, right? But this is what everyone gets before they close on a home if they're taking out a mortgage.
Correct. Yeah, and legally they have to receive it at least 3 business days before closing.
Okay.
They started that. It's called the TRID rule or TRID law. I think. Don't quote me on this. I think it was around 2016, but to prepare buyers so they could get their funds together. It wasn't a huge surprise because before this, sometimes people were getting their final documents until like 10 minutes before closing.
And then they're supposed to look through this, make sure all the numbers are right, and sign on the dotted line?
Yeah, so they don't need to sign anything yet when they receive it 3 days before closing. It's really just to kind of get their feet wet of what the final will look like. The numbers typically aren't 100% exact yet, but they're close. So they can go through it and then reach out to the loan officer and say, okay, I don't understand this section. Can we go over this? And then so we can talk about it again so they're prepared. So once they see the final one, they're like, okay, I understand that. And there's not as many questions and it's less stressful.
So this is basically to kind of lay out all of the payments and what people can expect?
Payments, breakdown of the closing costs, their interest rate, the type of loan.
What kind of questions do you get from your clients on closing disclosures? And I feel like I know what it is. Do you want me to say what I think it is?
Yeah, I'm curious.
What are all these fees? What are all these numbers on here? Can you take this off?
I never get that because before this, they get their loan estimate. So the loan estimate looks very similar to this. It just has a little different details, but basically the same numbers. With me, I try to make sure my loan estimate is as close as possible to what their final numbers are going to be. So, sometimes lenders will lowball their fees to make it look like they have, low fees. And by the time the client gets the closing disclosure, they jack their fees up. Buyers are mad. Yes. And that just, I can't sleep at night doing that. So, I always pad my initial numbers so that once they do see this final, they're very close, if not a little less than what they expected, so that buyers are happy.
So these numbers can change?
Yes, there are a few that are not allowed to change, specifically the lender fees from the initial loan estimate they get. But things such as the attorney fees, escrows, things like that, those can change slightly because the buyer has a right to choose their own attorney, and each attorney has different fees. They're all going to be around, $200 to $300, similar to each other. And then depending on the month that they close, escrows will vary slightly as well.
Okay.
Yeah.
So what do people need to know about this? And actually, I do have a question. Why, you said 3 days before closing, why not farther out?
Well, I like that you said that. So my company, we actually send it out a week before closing always, just because to better prepare clients. We don't like doing anything last minute, and it helps us just stay on timeline. And again, so there's not last minute changes. But honestly, I don't know why they chose 3. That's just, the lawmakers. That's what they chose.
What are some of the things that you have seen that have been hangups with getting a deal to close on the mortgage side?
Oh, hangups. Like that. Do you mean that like
something
a buyer
that
does something
derailed the deal a little bit, or something that a client? I guess buying a car would be one of them.
That's one of them. Yeah,
Take the money out.
Oh, probably the biggest one I see we always get it done, but it's money movement. A lot of people, because it's so easy to move money now. I think that's kind of the problem. I mean, it's great. You can literally like wire $100,000 from your phone, which is scary. I wouldn't do that. But people are like, oh yeah, I'll have the money by closing. I'm like, well, hold on a second. Where is that coming from?
It's very mafia sounding.
Yes.
I'll get it done.
Yes. And so I have to, ask politely. I'm like, if you don't mind me asking, where are your funds to close coming from?
Mm-hmm.
And if people say, oh yeah, I'll have it. I'm like, I'm sorry, I have to ask exactly where it's coming from. We see a lot of gifts from family members, which is great. I don't know where my, rich grandfather is. I'm still waiting for him to show up.
Me too.
I know.
It just have to be a little bit nicer,
Yeah. But, a lot of parents giving $100,000, $20,000. And if you don't give it the right way, it could open a can of worms, cause more documentation. And then you get into, like we were talking about before, people get emotional. Parents can get very emotional if they don't want to provide documentation that they have to, depending on how they move money.
Well, because, when they were buying a house,
oh, yeah.
You could say to one loan officer, no, I don't have a mortgage. And you would have a mortgage and they wouldn't know the difference because, it wasn't documented as much as it is today.
Right.
You fill out a loan application, they want to know every single thing about you.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
For good reason.
I think we are in a very good place, though. We do the right things to make sure that somebody will be able to repay their mortgage, but it's not, you don't have to give a blood sample. It's not that bad, You
don't die. No. I did. No, I'm just
Well, your first home, you did no doc, didn't you?
Yeah, my first house I ever bought was in 2006, and I was fresh out of flight school. It was my first career choice, was being a pilot.
This is not your footage, by the way. We have drone footage of Lake Norman.
Not my footage.
Taking this from the plane.
Yeah, my dad was like, "Who would give you a mortgage?" And I was like, "Dad, it's a no doc loan." He's like, "No documentation." He's like, "How do they do that?" And then like 2 years later, it was like the whole mortgage
crash.
State crash of 2008.
And now it all makes sense.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So there are still somewhat no doc loans, but they're way more strict. We still need a lot, whether it's one particular, it's called DSCR, where it's for investment properties. Mm-hmm. So if the rent that you're going to charge covers your mortgage, you put 20% down of good credit, you can get a loan. That's really it. But not like, 24-year-old Tom that said he made
blame you, Tom.
Yeah. Did you just say I make $200,000? Just $200,000. Yeah. That's me, 24-year-old Tom.
Yeah, it just gave me a house. I was like, I want a house. They gave me a house.
Well, we're going to take one more quick commercial break, and then we're going to come back with some more fun on Turnkey. We'll be right back.
Do you want to see a modern farmhouse in Denver, North Carolina? Not Colorado. North Carolina.
I don't know. I never like this. Let's go take a look. How do you select your agent? Big hat.
Yeah. All right. Well, welcome back to Turnkey on Queen City News Plus. We're joined by Christina and Tom Bramhall. We've been talking about how to pick your agent, as well as kind of the loan process and how that all works getting to closing. Tom, a lot of people pick you as your agent. You have a lot of fun with it. Great personality. You get the job done. But has there ever been a time that someone hasn't picked you and you found out why?
Sure, lots of times. Mm-hmm. Just recently, again, a lot of business comes from friends and family, and some of those folks have, existing, relationships with people, which I totally get, and I think it's great, and just appreciate the transparency. But recently I had a conversation with a guy that was going to list his house with somebody else, and I was like, I'm competitive, so I was like, I was nosy, and I knew who the agent was, and I looked it up, and I noticed that they had only sold one house in 7 months, and I just called him back and I said, hey man, I was like, no stress, but I just want to let you know that this market has shifted, it's changed. You can't just put a house on MLS and expect it to sell. Like, you've got to put some effort and some work. I was like, this agent had one house sold in the last 7 months. I was like, they don't have enough income to support themselves to eat, much less market your largest asset. And that house is still sitting.
Oh, really? I mean, it's not cheap to market a property.
No.
You've clearly done it before. How much would you say? And I know it depends on whether you're selling a 2-1, bungalow, whatever, versus a waterfront property on Lake Norman. But when it comes to listing the property and marketing it, how much would you say that costs?
I mean, it varies. I mean, photos and video, somewhere around $1,000 to $1,200, just for that part of it. And then you can go down rabbit holes after that with all kinds of different marketing. One of the things that I offer my clients is staging, because I believe so much on the marketing side. If I'm not taking pictures of something pretty, I got to have a pretty house to take a picture of. I got to have a house that's put together, that's, simple and clean and staged as well. It's not to say that you need to have this, McMansion that was like designer ready, but it needs to. Living in a house and selling a house are two totally different things. And because houses are so emotional, that's the part that you really got to convey as a realtor when you're talking to a seller is like, I understand you like all these things in your house, like all these kid pictures and all these dogs and the dog bed and all that stuff. It's got to go if we're selling this house.
Especially if someone doesn't like dogs or cats,
right?
That might be a reason that they choose to not purchase the home, because they're like, ooh.
Yeah, I just, one house I went into, this lady, it was like her wedding photos. I think it was before her wedding photos, and she was all laid out, real cool looking.
Yeah.
I was like, whoa, we got to take that down.
How about a portrait or, or a landscape?
Yeah, so like just depersonalizing the house, like kind of decluttering, simplifying. So that's something that I work with my clients on is that getting it ready to actually take amazing photos.
In terms of selling homes on the lake, the lake is a different beast, right? You've got, frontage that I believe is taxed differently than a home that isn't on the water. You have setbacks to worry about. What are some other things that people should keep in mind when they're looking for a waterfront property?
And when people look at a lake, they don't understand like the amount of like traffic that's on a lake, So you've got in Lake Norman, we've got main channel views. And then we've got views that are back in coves, So what kind of dock are you selecting? Is it a fixed dock, which means it does not move when waves are crashing up against it? Or do you have a floating dock? Or do you have a blend of both?
That will float away when a hurricane comes.
Right. So, like a dock, for instance, the length of the dock can be 120 feet. Well, some of those docks are longer than that. So if your dock is 140 feet, but you change from a floating dock to a fixed dock, you're in a different set of rules. So you've got to know what those rules are. You've got to work with, a dock builder. You got to know what you're looking at. Also, you're like, do you like sunsets or sunrises, right?
Mm-hmm.
What do you want to look at?
East or west?
Well, in July, I can tell you sunsets are nice, but when you've been on the lake all day and you want to break from that melting sun, and it's
awful.
You're grilling and it's still cooking you. It's something to consider. So maybe if you want that western view, maybe you want something that's got a tree a tree canopy, or larger trees, so you get some shade. Those kinds of things.
It's interesting that you mentioned like the main channel versus something that is down a cove, because I remember when we did a story about Christian McCaffrey's home, he's kind of set back in a cove, and that was very intentional because he was concerned when he moved here that people, if he was on the main channel, people would just pull their boats right up and try to take pictures when he's just trying to relax his home and relax. So
yeah.
To your point, there, for whatever reason, people make those decisions, they are important ones to consider.
They are, for sure.
Yeah.
100%. I mean, the lake's a big lake. There's 580 miles of shoreline. So, when you're looking at lake houses, and sometimes what I do is people will come up They're like, oh, we got an agent in Charlotte, and they'll come up and they're at my open house without an agent, and they're talking about buying, a lake house, and they don't have any idea on what they're actually looking at or things to consider. And, somebody in Charlotte that focuses on Charlotte might not know those questions either. I've got a lot of friends that are in Charlotte that are calling me like, hey man, like this house, like check out this house. Like, what do you think of this house? Like, what should I be asking her? What should I tell my client? So, and vice versa. I do the same thing. There's properties that, that I don't know a lot about that I might be asking, an agent that does more, with too. So it's like to be a know-it-all, I think is a little crazy.
You gotta know. I don't know it all in broadcast.
No,
and then for
constantly
more
learning.
than a decade. I mean, you can never know it all. You should always be a student in whatever industry you're in.
Exactly. Yeah. So that's how I've treated the business, is just leverage the relationships, and just be honest and transparent with people.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
All right, Christina, your time for a story, because Tom already told one.
What about?
Do you have any crazy ways that a deal has just kind of not materialized?
I mean, normally there's a way I can get it done.
Mm-hmm.
But probably the one that I can think that like this was not going through. This guy, nicest buyer, sweetest guy ever, easiest loan process, like literally nothing went wrong. Nothing went
That's a
wrong.
red flag right there.
So yeah, morning of closing, I actually couldn't go to the closing. I normally go to them to meet my client. But we were actually on a trip to the mountains. So, I call him, I'm like, text him, like, oh, are you excited for closing? He calls me right away. And I'm like, oh God. Like when I get a call, I'm like, uh-oh. And he's like, I have to let you know. And you're just waiting for it. What are you going to say? He's like, I got a job offer in Georgia. I'm like, oh, okay.
Congratulations.
And I felt really bad for the realtor, because they put so much time and effort and everything to it, because, sometimes if one house isn't falling through, at least they're looking in the same area. This realtor, he's not licensed in Georgia.
Yeah. You can recommend someone to get a referral.
Right.
It's the best that you can do, right?
Right.
Yeah.
Thankfully, I am licensed in Georgia, so I could help him. And he actually just closed a few weeks ago.
Oh, there you go.
Yeah. And the realtor here was able to refer it to an agent down there. So he still got a little bit, but yeah, he felt so bad. But he got a huge salary jump and he couldn't say no.
Things like that happen.
Yep.
And I've read stories about magic 8 balls at the closing table. Should I buy this house? And it lands on no, and the person walks away. Whether that one is true or not, I don't know. But I'm sure there are some pretty wild stories.
Yeah. Yeah.
Well, Tom and Christina, thank you so much for coming on Turnkey. It's been insightful, and I love the combination of the real estate agent and the senior loan officer. It's been a nice touch, and hopefully people learned a thing or two about real estate by having you here.
Thank you so much.
Thank you so much to everyone else out there for watching Turnkey on Queen City News Plus. We'll see you next time.
Queen City News Plus. Just search Queen City News on your smart TV's app store.